The last time we talked about the Kingdom of Ghana, it was going up like a bonfire. Well, tonight we are doing a cool down. Yes, we are taking it easy because the beginning of the Ghana Empire was nothing if not a slow burn. Welcome back to Black America and Africa History. I'm your host, and you can find me on social media. Tonight we are looking at the slow rise of the Ghana Empire. Now, if you missed our first episode talking about the burning of the kingdom, don't worry, you won't be lost. But you do have to understand that tonight we are going deep into the early history of the kingdom, specifically the pre-Soso Nyamekye era. So before Ghana became the hot mess that would eventually lead to its downfall, it was an empire that prided itself on peace and stability. And, like most things that seem too good to be true, the truth was just beneath the surface. It's going to be a great night, so let's get right into it. Now, most historians agree that the Ghana Empire was centered in what is today Western Africa, specifically in the regions of Mali and Mauritania. But others believe that the empire stretched as far south as modern-day Senegal. And I know it's hard to keep all these locations straight. So here's a little trick. Think of the empire as being located in this general area. Okay, got it? Good. Before we dive into everything, though, I need you to close your eyes and imagine yourself somewhere in West Africa over 1,000 years ago. What do you see? Do you see tall buildings or busy streets or maybe a quiet village? Well, what you're actually seeing is the Ghana Empire at its start, not with a bang, but with a whimper. At this point, the empire was a small collection of villages scattered throughout the region. But these villages weren't just any villages. They were home to the Soninka people who had a unique way of life. They were farmers and traders. And even though they lived in small villages, they created a network that tied them together. And that's kind of the key to understanding the start of the Ghana Empire. It wasn't a top-down approach. Instead, it grew from the bottom up. The Soninka people formed bonds with each other through trade and cultural practices, and this organic growth would eventually transform them into an empire. Think about it. You have these small villages connected by the movement of goods and people, and suddenly you have a community larger than any single village. And before you know it, you've got a kingdom. It might not have been intentional, but that's how empires are built. One connection at a time, one village at a time. See, they were patient and persistent. And that's the name of the game when you're trying to build something that lasts. That is why the Ghana Empire has become such an important part of African history. It's a reminder that sometimes the greatest empires start in the most humble of ways. And the Ghana Empire was truly humble. We're not talking about a palace with golden towers or a king with a long and powerful lineage. No, the Ghana Empire started with traders working hard to move their goods and farmers working harder to put food on the table. It might sound boring, but that's where the magic happened. In the quiet moments, in the everyday tasks. That's where the foundation of an empire was laid. And that is something worth remembering. In order to understand the rise of the Ghana Empire, we need to take a step back and look at the world around them. The Ghana Empire was located in an area that was largely untouched by outside influences. It was a place where people could live according to their own customs and beliefs without fear of interference. It was a time before colonization, before European powers carved up Africa into colonies. It was a time when Africa was free. And during this time, the Soninka people flourished. They developed their own language, culture, and government. They established small kingdoms and chieftainships, and they created a society that was rooted in tradition and community. The Soninka people were also incredibly resilient. They lived in a harsh environment, but they never gave up. They learned to adapt to the changing conditions, and they never stopped striving for a better life. For example, the Soninka people were experts at farming. They knew how to grow crops in the toughest conditions. They developed new farming techniques that allowed them to grow more food with less effort. They also domesticated animals and used them for transportation and for labor. All of this innovation and hard work paid off. The Soninka people were able to feed themselves and their families, and they even had enough food to trade with other groups. And as they traded, they spread their influence and their culture. They established trade routes that stretched for hundreds of miles, and they connected small villages and kingdoms. Together, they were building a network that would eventually become the Ghana Empire. It's important to note that the Soninka people weren't completely isolated. They interacted with other groups and cultures, and they exchanged ideas and goods. For example, they had contact with the Arabs and the Berbers, who were Muslim nomadic groups that lived in North Africa. The Soninka people were very open to new ideas, and they readily adopted some of the Islamic traditions. This fusion of cultures would play a significant role in the development of the empire. As the Soninka people continued to grow and prosper, their small kingdoms and chieftainships gradually merged and evolved into something bigger and more complex. They established a centralized government and a unified system of laws, and they created a court system to maintain order and resolve disputes. They also developed a strong military force to protect their borders and defend their territory. As the Ghana Empire grew, it became more prosperous and powerful. They controlled important trade routes, and they had access to valuable resources such as gold and salt. They became wealthy and influential, and their capital city, Kumbisale, became a center of trade and culture. During this time period, the Ghana Empire reached its peak under the leadership of a series of wise and capable rulers. They expanded the empire's territory and strengthened its economy and solidified its reputation as a major player in the region. Under their rule, the empire enjoyed a golden age of prosperity and stability. And yet, despite all of this success, the Ghana Empire would eventually fall. But that's a story for another day. Because today we are celebrating the quiet rise of the Ghana Empire, the story of how a small group of people with big dreams and even bigger hearts built an empire that would change history. And all they needed was a little patience, a lot of hard work, and a whole lot of faith in themselves. And with that, tonight's episode comes to an end. We hope you enjoyed this relaxing journey through the history of the Ghana Empire. Remember to subscribe for more exciting adventures and leave us a comment below with your thoughts on tonight's episode. Thanks for watching, take care, and see you next time. And if you want to continue learning about African history, don't forget to check out our podcast. New episodes drop every Wednesday. Until then, be sure to follow us on social media.